Is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. A little chaotic start to the day here. Cliffy got to witness the craziness in my house. Little fire in the oven. Dogs going nuts. Kids going nuts. But here we are. Yesterday, weird 4-game slate. I mean, that happens. The team, New Jersey won. That's not super surprising. But, the guys didn't really have a great DFS performance. You needed Devin Tays, I think, was the highest scoring player on the slate. Goalies were a mess, but we all knew that going in. Montreal's a wagon. We knew that going in. I don't know if we knew that going in, but they absolutely shut down the middle six of Vancouver. But yeah, I think you needed JT Miller and you needed Devin Tays, and nothing else really mattered. It was a write-off 4-game slate, tax purposes. That's what we call it in the business. But we're back for a 10-gamer here tonight. Big GPPs. There is a live final qualifier as well on DraftKings. FanDuel might have stuff. I don't know. What's going on, Cliffy?
Yeah, not a whole lot. JT Miller, 2 goals, 2 assists last night. He got in on every Vancouver goal. I think that line had all of their goals. Lekharimaki was called up. We got that news in warm-up that he was skating with JT Miller. Funny enough, I didn't have any players in that first game. So I was trying to swap to some sort of Vancouver power play-ish stack, and I couldn't make it work with any of the New Jersey guys, so I just said, screw it. Played the Pius Suter line. They did absolutely nothing. JT Miller line had 4 goals and 3 assists. So they did pretty well. Our Montreal Canadiens, as of today, sitting in a playoff spot. Honestly, man, after the first month of the season, that seems like just an impossible statement to make, but here we are. Not a lot going on yesterday's slate. Devin Taves smashed. JT Miller's line was great. There were some good games in that Buffalo game. I think Tage Thompson had a goal in the shot bonus, but it was really Taves and Miller. We had 10 games on the docket here tonight. We have Edmonton, top line Connor Brown once again. We have Toronto going into Philly after they just played on Sunday. This is a home and home. We have a couple late smash spots with Calgary going into Anaheim and Vegas going into San Jose. So looks like it'll be a late night of hockey watching because those are 2 pretty important games at the very end of the slate. And San Jose doesn't even start puck drop won't be till 10:40 Eastern. So going to be a late one, but some pretty good games across the board. I think a couple spots you can more or less just cross off, but we'll get to those one by one.
We'll start with an idiotic question on my part. It's not really an idiotic question. It's just it's just painful. Who would you rather play as a third wheel tonight, Connor Brown or Tanner Pearson?
I mean, it's Tanner Pearson.
Yeah,
it's just because of the matchup. I mean, we'll get to that game later. We slander Pearson. He does have something like 5 points in his last 4 games, or maybe it's 4 points in 5 games, something like that. He's actually been putting up points. Top line spot. We'll get to that. It's going to be annoying. I know that much.
Oh, yeah. No matter what we do, it's going to be the wrong thing because with great power comes great responsibility. But let's get into this slate. Before we do, just want to extend a thank you to everyone watching here today. We do really appreciate you. They did finally put us on the schedule today. We did get into the Stochastic tweet. We did it. We made it. They still won't let me in the Hall of Fame, though. So I have that litigation ongoing. But just thank you guys for hanging out with us. If you do want to go premium, you can click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. Let's hop into this slate. Edmonton Oilers, they 3.2 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 2.7. Boston going Pasternak, Zacha, Geeky, Marchand, Lindholm, Coyle. Yeah, that's correct. And then Edmonton, mercifully, for some reason that I am not aware of why they're doing this, they're going McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Brown, Draisaitl, Arvidsson, Podkolzin, Hyman, Henrique, Skinner. No. Hyman's with Janmark and Kapanen, right? Irregardless.
Yeah, no, Hyman, Henrique, Skinner is expected to be the third line.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's an interesting third line, honestly, but like, are we playing Edmonton 3 on the slate? Probably not, but I'll start on the Boston side. Like, I'm glad they moved Lindholm off the top line because him and Pastrnak just don't do anything together. This would be the iteration of Boston 1 that I would have the most interest in, Zacha, Pastrnak, Geeky. I don't have a ton of faith in the Edmonton goaltending. Like, I don't know if they've confirmed Picard, but I think he's probable to start tonight, or I don't know. But either way, both the goalies have been up and down this season. These Edmonton lines are a bit strange. I mean, they won't see much of that Draisaitl line, which has been very, very good. The McDavid line, with McDavid, it's usually generally pretty good. So, like, Boston 1's fine in the mid-range, like 16. They're 16-4, right? The way I think I'm building tonight, I don't know if I'm going to be in that price range because there's a bunch of filler lines that I'm okay with. And, there's a lot of spend up lines and there's a bunch in low owned areas. Like, obviously we have Pittsburgh 1. We have Tampa, who's wildly expensive, which might not be something we want to do, but there's no ownership on Toronto. There's no ownership on Winnipeg, and they're both in the 22,000s. And then you have Vegas and Columbus right around 19K. So, like, getting in a $16,400 line is kind of in no man's land for the way I want to build. I'm fine with Boston 1 here. I don't love it, but again, in the mid-range, I am good with it. Boston 2, like, Lindholm and Marchand have been pretty good together this season. They're only 12,700. I'd throw them in a basket of filler lines that you can use in MME. There's other filler lines that I prefer than them, but you do get 2 guys on the top power play unit. It's not the best matchup, but at that price, I think you throw them in the filler basket. So not super thrilled about Boston, but I get the play. Edmonton, like, these lines are just bad. If I had a full stack line, I think it would be Draisaitl, Arvidsson, Podkolzin at 15-1. They've just been very, very good this season together. It's probably their best 5-on-5 line now. Like, this isn't the best power play matchup. Boston has stopped taking a boatload of penalties. Their goalies have gotten better. They've gotten better defensively. The issue is, like, there's no ownership on McDavid, right? And Edmonton has a 3.2 total. So that just gives me pause immediately when you can get a very low on McDavid. I think you can do McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, leave off Brown, add in Draisaitl, add in Hyman, because, if this is a close game, McDavid's going to play with Draisaitl. McDavid's going to play with Hyman. So I think for me, because of the ownership, I'm fine with leaving off Brown and adding in a Draisaitl or Hyman because there's no ownership there. You're going to get a wildly low-owned combo in a 3.2 total. Yes, it's not the best matchup, but McDavid going into Boston when Bergeron was there, we said you could play him. He had 2 goals. So, like, McDavid's matchup proof. I'm fine with some sort of McDavid stack. If I had to just straight up full stack a line, it would be Draisaitl, Arvidsson, Podkolzin at 15-1. But I do think I would want to get McDavid in a stack at that ownership.
Yeah, I have no interest in Boston. I imagine it's going to be Skinner starting tonight. I'm pretty sure Picard or Calvin Pickard started on Saturday, and then they have Chicago this weekend, so that feels like a Pickard start. So I think it'll be Skinner. Skinner's been playing better. Edmonton's legitimately good defensively. Like, that's the problem. And not that Boston power play is any good. I mentioned that in our Discord. The Boston top power play unit, as currently constructed at 5-on-4, has played like 95 minutes together. They have 6 goals. Even if they're to stay together, every single game for an entire season, you're looking at maybe 16, 17 goals on the power play over the course of an entire season at 5-on-5. Like, they're just not scoring. So Edmonton doesn't take penalties. Boston's not scoring. Edmonton's actually good defensively. Skinner's playing better. You're not getting an ownership discount on Boston. That's the other thing. It's not like, the Boston top line is coming in at 0.8% ownership. They're basically coming in on their top two stack. So, like, pass. For me, it's about the Edmonton side. Now, here's the thing. Connor Brown is a good defensive winger. He's a bad offensive winger. He makes that line worse offensively. Now, making a McDavid line worse offensively is still a very good offensive line, but they're just not elite. I agree with you. I have no interest in playing a third line with Jeff Skinner and Adam Henrique on it. So, yeah, it would be Edmonton 2 by default. That second line, 3.1 expected goals for, 2.1 against per 60 in their minutes together. And the thing is they don't play very much with Evan Bouchard and the Matthias Ekholm pairing. They play much more often with the second and third pairs than they do the top pair, and they're still just obliterating the competition. I do like Edmonton 2 here. I agree with you. I would be hard-pressed not to play a stack with McDavid. So I think it's a night where if I'm playing Edmonton, I'm putting McDavid and Draisaitl in and building around that. Edmonton isn't in my favorite spot on the board here tonight, but listen, you mentioned the ownership. I'll bring it up on the screen. McDavid's at 4.1%. Nurse is at 2.9%. Nugent Hopkins is the next highest forward at 2%. So every single player is under 5%, and McDavid is the only player over 2% ownership. And this is the Edmonton Oilers. Swayman has generally been better over the last 6 weeks. He just gave up 6 goals on Saturday night. You know what I mean? Or 5 goals, or whatever it was. Or maybe it was only 4. I think there was 2 empty netters, so don't want to slag him too much. I think in single entry, I'm probably not going to get there. There are a couple other low-owned spots that I do like. But, like, if I'm 20 maxing, I probably have at least one Edmonton stack, if not 2. If 150, maybe at like a half dozen or something like that, because they're coming in with low ownership and they can just blow the doors off the slate in 1 hour. So I do like Edmonton 2 in particular, but I would probably build around McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Edmonton. They have a 3.2 total. If Boston was running like Lindholm, Pasta, Marchand, I'd be a lot more interested because they've been bad together. So, but McDavid, low owned, 10-game slate, 3.2 total, just screams break the slate. And that's I always just keep that in the back of my head. Ottawa Senators. What a fun team they are. Heading into Detroit, the Red Wings have a 2.9 total. I see our top stacks has Tkachuk, Pinto, Grieg, Stützle, Batherson, Giroux. They didn't skate this morning, and they started the last game with Gaudette. I know Giroux moved up there.
That was practice yesterday.
That was practice yesterday. I missed that. Thank you, Cliffy. That is interesting because that Larkin, Raymond, Veleno line, it hasn't been a very, very big sample. It's been like 50 minutes. They've actually been pretty good defensively. Cedar with Sherratt is a different story. Like, if they move Edmondson back up, that's a legitimately good pairing. But I'm wondering who they're going to go out against. I would imagine it's still Brady Tkachuk with Pinto and Grieg. If that is the case, and we won't know definitively, it's just best guesses, that Stützle, Batherson, Giroux line is going to see middle six matchups of Detroit, which is a mess. Just a mess. So, and they're only coming in at 1%. Stützle, Batherson, Giroux at 15,700. They're cheaper than Boston. You can't really, they're not really a filler, but you probably could get them in with, like, just say Columbus if you punted a little bit. So
just to cut in real quick, Ottawa was in St. Louis on the weekend, and Robert Thomas was sent out against Tkachuk for 80% of his shifts at even strength. So I would assume
yeah. So, like, the Tkachuk line's fine, but they're coming in at 8.2% projected ownership. That's a little bit tougher 5-on-5 matchup. I'd rather have Stützle, Batherson, Giroux. You get two of those guys on the top power play unit. That Pinto line only has Tkachuk, right? This is a good power play matchup. The Senators' power plays is what it is. I mean, they had a good stretch there for a little bit, but the Detroit penalty kill is awful. And you get two guys on the power play there. You hope Stützle is feeling better because the last couple times he's played, he looked atrocious. But that had to be illness related, I would hope. 15,701%. Like that Tkachuk line is 8.2%. It's easy for me to get to Stützle, Batherson, Giroux here. On the Detroit side, like I'm fine with Larkin, Raymond, Veleno. Veleno doesn't really do too much offensively. He's similar in the sense to Connor Brown, where he's a decent defensive forward, doesn't do fuck all offensively. So if you want to do like Larkin, Raymond, and leave off Veleno and add in DeBrincat or add in Kane, like sure. If you're MMEing and you get some just straight up Detroit one, I think that's fine as well. Like Ottawa has looked awful in the past week or two, whether, that's sickness or just they're going through a bad stretch, whatever. But at 14,302.2% projected ownership, like I'm fine to take a stab in 20 max. I don't think I'd prioritize them in single entry. Like if I got a Raymond one off or a Larkin one off, I won't tell you no. You know what I mean? Detroit's second line, DeBrincat, Kane, Kopp at 12.5. I'll just throw them into the basket of filler lines that you can use in MME. I don't particularly love the line. I think I'd be more likely to one off in 3 max or something like that. But if you're making 20 to 150 and you get some of that as a filler, sure, be my guest. But my favorite line in this game is Stützle, Batherson, Giroux.
I agree that my favorite even strength line on the Ottawa side is that Stützle line. I also don't think I can make an Ottawa stack and leave Brady Tkachuk off of it. That's just kind of the problem. Is he like the guys at it's like 4 shots per game. He's on pace for almost 40 goals, point per game pace. He's been easily their best offensive player this season. Like, seems to me like if Ottawa does have a slate breaking DFS score here tonight, that Tkachuk is going to get involved. So I think I would probably I'd almost be tempted to do like a Pinto, Tkachuk, Batherson stack or something like that. Like if your point about Tim Stützle, we talked about this, I think, over the weekend. Like he's apparently been playing through an illness. And if you've seen the illnesses across the NHL, there are guys missing like a week plus with whatever's going around. And he's trying to play through it. So whether he's over it, how bad it is, we just don't know any of that. So it's a best guess. You just have to kind of assume that he's okay. But if you don't want to pay up for Stützle and like, listen, we're Stützle guys here. He's averaging under 2 shots a game. Like, you know what I mean? We talked yesterday with New Jersey about Jesper Bratt, how Jesper Bratt can have big DFS performances, but he's not shooting the puck. So when it's not a good night, it's a pretty bad night. Like Tim Stützle is in that same boat where if he doesn't score that empty net goal, you're basically relying on him for 3 assists or something. So I would be tempted to go to like a Pinto, like I said, a Pinto, Tkachuk, Batherson stack. 17,900. It's not that expensive. Pinto has been playing a lot more. He's been producing well. He's still not super expensive. That's kind of the thing. It's like, if you just want to go to like Stützle, Batherson, Tkachuk, you can do that. Then it's real expensive. It's well over 20K. That's a different story. But I don't mind Ottawa here tonight. Like that Sherratt-Cedar pairing is not good. Like, even with pretty good goaltending behind them, their goals against average or goals against per minute is about league average. So the matchup isn't that bad for the Ottawa top line. I do like the Stützle line. Like I said, I would be hard pressed to make an Ottawa stack without Tkachuk. That's the only issue. On the Ottawa side, big surprise with no Linus Ullmark. The problem is goaltending. You look at their most recent stretch. I think their last 8 games or something like that that's 5-on-5. It's an 880 save percentage. It's just like they've just not been good. Now, I'm not necessarily running out to play Detroit here. mainly because, one, I don't like Joe Veleno. Joe Veleno, like, he's the Connor Brown of Tanner Pearson's. You know what I mean? Like, he's just a guy. And, we've seen how good that Detroit power play can be when they do stack the top power play unit, and it is a stacked power play unit. Like, if you need a cheaper line, fine, you can leave Veleno. I would be more tempted to do like a Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond, Kane, something like that. The Ottawa penalty kill is fine, but it's certainly nothing to fear or anything like that. Detroit has looked better under Todd McClellan. Like, do got to kind of hand it to them. I don't really like either side. I don't think I'm going to be stacking either side here in single entry. I would be more tempted to make some sort of power play stack, or at least 3-man power play stack on the Detroit side, and on the Ottawa side, like Tkachuk with whatever players you want to play them with. But I'm going to be honest, I don't really like either side. I think you're just kind of relying on the goaltending failing, and I hate stacking like that.
Yeah, your point about Tkachuk is a good one. Like, it would feel bad to stack the Sens and they score like 6 goals and Tkachuk has like 47 DK points. You know what I mean? Like, that's within the realm of possibilities. But, Dallas, the Stars, the 3.5 total. Heading into Madison Square Garden, the Rangers have a 2.9. Chris Kreider to IR with a back injury. Igor's still out. They're a mess. They're going Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Mika Zibanejad, Riley Smith, Johnny Brzezinski, Cooley, Hedl, and Berard. Arthur Kaliev not in the lineup tonight because Lavalette said they won the last game and they want to run back the same lineup. Dallas going Johnson, Duchesne, Ben, Robertson, Hintz, Dodonov, Stankov, and Bork, Sam Steele. On the Rangers side, the only line that I have interest in as a full stack would be Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. They're still producing. They're cheaper than they were before. The problem is this is just a pretty tough matchup. Like, Ottinger's in net. Yes, Dumba's out, but, they're still good defensively. I throw them into my MME mix at 17,300. It's kind of hard to prioritize them in single entry when you have the likes of Vegas and Columbus right above them. You know what I mean? I like them, but it would be more as a 20 max type deal. Hedl as a one-off, a 2-man with Will Cooley. I think that's fine if you're doing like a super expensive power play type stack or just a straight up expensive stack. That 2-man I throw into a super cheap filler basket. But other than that, like, I don't have any interest in Zibanejad, Smith, Brzezinski. On the Dallas side, like, obviously I have interest in Johnson, Duchesne, Ben. They're 15,300 with a 9.1% top 2 stack, but the issue is they're coming in with 16% projected ownership. And I know it's a 10-game slate, but that's not wildly negative leverage. You have John Quick going Johnny Quick, great backup. He'll have his great games when he plays once a week or whatever. You have to have Johnny Quick play every day with Igor out. Like, it's going to be a mess. And this line has been unbelievable in their, I think it's like 4 or 5 games they've been together. 50-minute sample, 5.3 expected goals for per 60, 7.1 actual. So, like, that 16% is high, and maybe they come in a bit higher. But, like, in a mid-range build, it's hard not to start with Dallas 2 here. Can you fit them in with Columbus? You're going to have to really do some funny stuff with your defensemen. And I think Columbus and Vegas is about as high as you can get with them, but you have to punt pretty hard there. I'm fine with them. I like them. The Rangers are a mess. As long as Fox is with Lindgren and Igor's out, like, the other team's always in play. I kind of like Robertson, Hintz, Dodonov here. 14,500, 3.8% projected ownership, so like a fourth of the ownership. And Robertson and Hintz have come alive a little bit. I know Dodonov isn't the most ideal third wheel here, but we're considering playing Tanner Pearson. We've talked about Connor Brown. We've talked about Joe Veleno. So we'll add in Evgeny Dodonov into the mix. He's only 3,200, right? If he gets like an assist and 2 shots on goal, it's not going to kill you. They're 14,500. It gives you more lineup flexibility. And it gets you a fourth of the ownership in a game where the total has gone up over 10% on the Dallas side. So ownership agnostic, my favorite line would be Johnston, Duchesne, Ben. But when you throw in ownership, matchup, price, I think I prefer Robertson, Hintz to Donoff.
So the only line I agree on, the only line I really have interest in on the Ranger side is that Johnston, Duchesne, Ben, or on the Ranger side is Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. Sorry. Lafreniere is going to be on the top power play with Kreider out. So it is that is a perfectly correlated top line where every guy, like Lafreniere at the low end, will play 19 minutes. He might even play 20. Like every guy might be over 20 to 22 or 23 minutes tonight. Like regardless of what we think of the Rangers, a perfectly correlated top line at home where every guy is going to get 20 to 22 minutes, 23 minutes of ice time is always worth considering. It is a tough matchup. The problem is Dallas's penalty kill. Dallas might have the best penalty kill in the league. They're bottom 10 in the league for power play opportunities given up per game to the opponent on the season. They're bottom 10 over the last 5 weeks. They've given up the fewest power play goals against of any team in the league this season. They've given up fewer power play goals than 20 players have individually on the season. So, the Rangers can get there at 5-on-5. Maybe they get one power play goal out of 2 or 3 opportunities. Maybe they get lucky or something like that. I don't mind the Rangers. And it's because they're 17,300. They're not 20,300. You know what I mean? Like this is a mid-ish price line that is going to play 20 plus minutes. That is perfectly correlated at home. That is still valuable. So I at least have the Rangers in we'll call them the consideration bucket because of their price. And there's not really a whole lot else in that price range, right? Like we'll get to Minnesota later, like maybe Minnesota. We just talked about Boston's top line, Tampa Bay depth, Nashville, we'll get to Vegas and Columbus. We'll get to them, but there's more ownership. Like there are a couple lines. They're not my favorite line in that price range, but they're not at the bottom of the pile either, is the way that I have it. So I don't mind them. I think pretty clearly this is a Dallas game. Johnston, Duchesne, Ben line has been pretty good together. 77 shot attempts, 7.1 goals per 60. Obviously, they're shooting pretty high, 16.5%. But even with the volume of shots that they're generating, even if you back that off to like 11%, they're still well above average by scoring, like 50% above the league average. So like this has been a really good line. Even Jamie Benn is starting to shoot quite a bit lately. The Rangers have been taking a lot of penalties. That's another thing. Is like as this team's been on a slide, they've been taking a lot more penalties. They're at 3.2 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks. It's the most on the slate of any team on this slate in the last 5 weeks. So it's not like Dallas's power play has been great, but it has been getting better, and we know how good it's been over the last couple of years. So I do have interest in that line. I think I would hate to leave Matt Duchesne off, but I think I would almost turn Dallas into a power play stack if I'm worried about ownership, especially in smaller single entry contests. Like some of these guys are probably going to be 20%. But I really do like that line. It's a great matchup for him. The only concern is ownership. If you're not concerned about ownership, and I'm really not that concerned about it on a 10-game slate, especially with a line this good, I really do like that Dallas line. If you want to dip down to the Hintz Robertson line, they're a little bit cheaper, a lot less ownership. I think it's fine. But this is Dallas's best line right now. So I really do like that Johnston line. I am still considering the Rangers. Like I said, any line playing 20 to 23 minutes that's perfectly correlated at home has to be considered.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going to not tonight, but when Celebrini and Toffoli were with like Zetterland at 15-8, they're playing 21, 20 minutes fully correlated. If you're going to sit or playing them, like obviously the Rangers aren't playing. They're still generating. You know what I mean? They have a 3.1 expected goals. It's not like they've fallen off the cliff defensively, but it's not like they've fallen off offensively. They're still creating. Let's get to the people's main event. Columbus Blue Jackets with a 3 total heading into Pittsburgh. The Penguins have a 3.6. 3.6 is the highest home total on the slate by 10%. This is a good power play matchup for Pittsburgh. It's actually a decent power play spot for Columbus. Like, the expected goals numbers on both teams' penalty kills are very similar. The actual goals are way worse for Columbus, but that's, it is what it is there. The expected goals are very similar. Now, Pittsburgh won Crosby, Rust, Raquel, 21,200. They have the highest top 2 stack percentage of the night, 18.2%. 10% projected ownership. Columbus won Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov, 18,900, 10.7% projected top 2 stack, 6.9% projected ownership, which is nice. Kind of in a little bit of a kerfuffle, if you will. I do really like Pittsburgh 1 here, but at that price, right, at 21,200, you want 20, 21, 22 minutes. They've been playing 18, 19, 20. For $22,100, $900 more, you can get the Winnipeg top line or the Matthews line, and those boys are going to play their minutes. I think they're fine from the sense that, this is one of the best power play spots on the night. I just want to see more minutes, but they are 3.4 expected goals per 60, about 3 actual. Their shooting percentage is a bit low. They have still been trading chances, though, and that does worry me going up against Columbus 1 because they have been pretty dominant this season. 3.8 expected goals per 60, 6 actual still in a 219-minute sample. Like, they're not slowing down. I really do like both top lines here, and I know we have bias towards Columbus 1. Rightfully so. They've been unbelievable, and Werenski's been insane. But that's another thing, right? If you're going to play Columbus 1, you kind of almost have to play Werenski, and then it gets really, really expensive. You don't have to play the power play quarterback for Pittsburgh, right? So I'm almost leaning towards Pittsburgh 1 slightly here. Just when you throw everything together, they're at home. They can dictate matchups. They have a great power play opportunity. They have the highest top 2 stack percentage. Maybe I'm just living in a bubble with Columbus, but they're obviously in a great spot as well. I don't like either goaltender, so I'm completely fine with both top lines here. I think with Columbus, and obviously we'll get to defensemen at the end, I think you got to bring Werenski along, and that will make it really expensive. So you're kind of in a similar boat in the sense that you do need a filler stack with both these top 2 stacks. So I'm good with both. The depth I don't particularly love at all. I guess if anything, it'd be a Kent Johnson one-off or a Bunting one-off. But other than that, it's just the top lines.
Yeah. I think my problem with Pittsburgh is that, the ice time thing you mentioned is real. There have been games, obviously Crosby could play 20 plus. There have been games where they play around 20 minutes, but there has been a lot of times where they've been in the 19-ish range. The other is their power play sucks. You know what I mean? I don't know what, yes, this is a good power play spot against a Columbus penalty kill that really hasn't been that good this season. I do wonder how much of it is just the goaltending. Now, obviously, it's going to be the same goaltender, so the same issues will persist, but it's 790 save percentage on the penalty kill over the last 15 games. You got to think that gets better. Pittsburgh's power play is just not good. They do get power play goals once in a while. They do play with the empty net, which is very important, all that stuff. the thing, like, I kind of agree. I'd probably rather just pay like an extra $900 to go play Winnipeg, or play an extra $900 to go play Toronto. That's just kind of the issue. Like, if I'm gonna play a chalky line here tonight, I think it would probably be over in Dallas rather than Pittsburgh. It feels like every time I say I don't really like the Penguins, they absolutely smash the slate. So maybe I should make a second lineup with the Penguins just to kind of spite myself. But there are just other lines in that price range I'd rather play. I don't have an issue with that top line per se, or the matchup or anything like that. It's just when I look at other lines in that price range, I just think there are other spots that I would rather go. Like, I'm going to be honest, you can save $2,000 to go play Vegas against San Jose. You know what I mean? Tanner Pearson and all. And if you don't want to, you can take out Tanner Pearson for relatively the same price. You add in like Pavel Dorofeyev for power play stacking. Like, there are just other lines on that price range I'd rather play. I have no issue with Pittsburgh specifically. I'm definitely not playing the second line. I don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to stay together very long. I mean, what do I say about Columbus 1? I really do like them again. The price is coming up. Ownership is around 10%. They've still been arguably the best 5-on-5 line in the NHL this season. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, they have been, like, I guess you could say maybe Tampa. Tampa's also $8,000 more expensive here tonight. There aren't really many other top lines other than that have been better than this Columbus top line. And you talk about they're still scoring a lot. Like, they're still scoring a lot. They're shooting 16%, but they're creating 3.7 expected goals. So, like, even if they're shooting like 11 to 12%, they would still be, I don't know, 60, 70% better than the league average by scoring. Like, and their power play is actually good. Like, by shot generation, goal generation, everything. I think the issue you raised about Werenski is the vital one here. Is like, I'm not sure that I would play Columbus without at least a defenseman. I would be tempted to probably play Werenski. Obviously, he's super expensive. I think you can dip down to Fabro, because this is a really good 5-on-5 matchup, and they'll still play a fair bit with Fabro. I think you can do that. I would probably still rather play Columbus 1 here, because they are a fair bit cheaper with lower ownership. But I have no issue with either top line here tonight, and I have no interest in the depth on either side.
Yeah, and we'll get to defensemen at the end. But in 40 games this season, Werenski has 160 shots on goal. Like, it's just bonkers, the stretch he's been on. It's insane. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3 total. Heading into Tampa, the Lightning have a 3 total. I mean, what do you really say about this game? Like, yeah, I like Kucherov. Yeah, I like Point. Yeah, I like Gensel. I don't like any of their prices. They're $26,700. What do you even try to do with that? Like, I don't know if I'd play them against the Sharks at that price on this slate. 0.7% projected ownership. So, like, if you're making 20 to 150, you get 2 or 3%, you're way over the field, and it's a good leverage play because they're a good line.
I mean, I will say we didn't play them against the Sharks. They played the Sharks, what was it? It's like Saturday or Thursday or something like that. And we just Sunday, said not. Right? Yeah, Sunday. No, they played Anaheim Sunday, so it must have been Saturday. I just straight up said I'm not playing them. I don't. Oh, yeah. Even against San Jose, I was just like, I am not playing them at that price. You just can't.
Yeah, at that price, you need everyone to get at least a bonus.
You need close
to
what
shot.
No, you need close to what Toronto 1 did the other night, which is like 5 goals, 7 assists. Legitimately.
Hat trick, bonuses. you need insane stuff. Like, it's like in single entry, that price is impossible. In MME, the price is almost impossible, but at 0.7%, you get 1 or 2% in your 150 max, and you just kind of, maybe they break the slate. But then you also have to find like a $10,000 or less line that does stuff. So, like, that price is just insane. Kucherov 1 offshore. Why not? Hagel, Sorelli, they're getting expensive, though. And this isn't – I know Carolina's been sliding. They've had a rough few weeks, but no. On the Carolina side, I think if anything, it would be Aho, Jarvis, or Oslovic is $16,900. they're kind of you can throw them in that mid-range basket build with that starts with like the Wyatt Johnson line. You can throw the Rangers top line in that mix. Not prioritizing them in single entry, but if you're MMEing and you want to make some mid-range build lineups instead of stars and scrubs, I think, this is one of those lines that you can consider. Tampa isn't the best defensive team. This line has been good offensively. It's really about it. I don't trust Carolina, the other line, staying together at all. Svechnikov has been going up and down. Kotkaniemi has been moving all over the place. You know what I mean? So it would just be Carolina won in this game, and that's more of an MME type deal for me.
Yeah, I'm just not playing Tampa at those prices, so can move along to Carolina. The way these lines are constructed, the only line that I have interest in is that Roslovic, Aho, Jarvis line. Like, they have been good good. They haven't generated super well, 2.8 expected goals, but 4.4 actual goals, shooting 15%, which is a little high. But Aho has 19 shots in his last 5 games. The power play's taken a bit of a dive since Shane Gostisbehere got hurt, but they're still generating roughly the same amount of shots. It's just a shooting percentage drop. And I'm not super concerned about a shooting percentage drop in a small sample. It's only been like 4 games or whatever. So, I don't mind Carolina 1 here. Like, I would rather play Carolina 1 than Boston. I'll put it that much.
I like that.
Might rather play them than Minnesota. We'll talk about that game in a second, but I don't mind Carolina 1 here. Other than that, it would be one-offs. You can one-off Svechnikov. He won't see any of the shutdown matchups. I think that's fine. If you want to one-off Natchez, I guess that's fine. But they're still trying to find the right configurations for their line. So other than the top line, I agree. I don't really have a lot of faith that any of the lines are going to stay together. So for me, the only real interest in single entry in this game is Carolina 1, and even then, I just don't have a ton of interest in it.
Yeah. Toronto Maple Leafs with a 3.1 total heading into Philadelphia. The Flyers have a 2.9. For some reason, Craig Berube decided to break up that third line so he can get Ryan Reeves in the lineup. Love NHL coaches. Just amazingly smart. Toronto's going Matthews, Marner, Nyes, Nylander, Tavares, McMahon, Pacioretty, Domi, Lorentz. Flyers, as far as we know, you never know with Torts. Connecting Tippett, Paling, Mitchkov, Frost, Lawton, Brink, Forrester, Cates. Okay, so I'm a little bit confused here. We're getting Pittsburgh at around 10% at 21,200. This Leafs line, since Matthew has come back, has been running people over. They get the Paling line here if they stay together. That's been iffy defensively with Ivan Fedotov in net and a bad penalty kill. And they're coming in at 1.7%. Yes, I know they're outside of Tampa, they're the most expensive line on the slate, but at 1.7%, you're going to give me a Matthews line against the AHL goalie. Nyes has been going nuts lately. You get Marner and Matthews on the top power play. Not sure what I'm missing here because I prefer Toronto to Pittsburgh here. You want to dip down to Nylander, Tavares, McMahon. That's an interesting line because McMahon has played pretty well this season. Tavares and Nylander have generally been good. Tavares' best numbers of the season have been with Max Pacioretty. But I think he'll be fine with McMahon, Nylander. The issue is they're 19,400, right? That price is kind of funky. At that point, I'll just go play Vegas or Columbus. So I think this would be a Toronto 1 game for me. On the Flyers side, I don't have a ton of interest in full stacking anything, but if you are power play stacking Vegas or power play doing something with Winnipeg, I would consider the Brink Forrester Cates line. You don't have to full stack like a 2-mana Cates Forrester or Forrester Brink, something like that is fine. I would one off Konechny, 2-mana with Tippett. I think that might be a safe bet. One off Mitchkov, but Torts is just in one of those phases where he's so untrustworthy. Besides keeping that Brink Forrester Cates line together, that I'd probably just one off. But Toronto 1, my favorite line in this game. It's not particularly close.
The only thing I have interest in the Flyer side is that Brink Cates Forster line, because if for some reason you're playing Tampa, you can put him in with Tampa. Certainly put him in with Winnipeg, something like that, or Edmonton power plays. Something along those lines. They have been good. 3.2 expected goals, 4.3 actual goals. They're all in the second power play unit together. Not that that matters because the only power play that's worse than Philly's is Boston's. That's all I have interest in. This team sucks. On the Toronto side, that second line is it's just too expensive. I'd rather just pay up and go play the top line. So it is a Toronto top line that is my interest in this game. I think the interesting thing is that when Matthews came back, obviously Nyes lost his power play role, but Nyes played 19 minutes against Boston and then played 21 minutes in that overtime game against the Flyers on the weekend. He's still getting a lot of minutes, even though he's not on the top power play unit. So, I really do like Toronto 3.8 expected goals, 4 actual goals per 60 minutes, 5-on-5 this season. Who knows how healthy Matthews actually is, but they're still, like you said, they're still playing extremely well. I'm not worried about any of the matchups on the Flyers side. I really don't care what lines they put together. Their defensemen are awful. Their goalies suck. I really do like Toronto here. I like them better. I do like them better than Pittsburgh. So Toronto 1 for me. I don't know. I don't think I would deviate too far from that because if you had Nylander or something over Nyes, like at that point you're just getting to Tampa Bay territory. I wouldn't want to play the second line. I think like a Domi Pacioretty 2-man or something like that. If you want to dip down that far is fine because Lord knows the Flyers depth, couldn't stop anything. Their goalies certainly can't. But for me, this is a Toronto 1 game and it's not even close.
Yeah. Let the hate flow through you, Cliffy.
I mean, listen, man, if you're at the point where you're playing Ryan Poehling on your top line, just like it's George Costanza dragging around the World Series trophy in the parking lot. Like you're just trying to get fired.
My voice is good enough to do the Palpatine right now because I'm recovering from RSV, which I think Timmy Stützle has. He probably should take a day off. Anyway, St. Louis Blues with a 2.6 total heading into Minnesota. The Wild have a 2.8. This is a 5.5 total, and we have a line projected over 17%. It is Minnesota 1 projected at 17%, and Kaprizov is not back. I don't know what to do with Minnesota here. I really don't. I'm leaning towards just straight up fading it in single entry for a couple reasons. One, Minnesota's at home, and they're probably going to send Joe Eriksson Ek out against Thomas Buchnevich Saad. Like that Shen Kyrou Holloway line has been pretty good, especially since they switched coaches. So like 17%, like at that point, if I'm going to play a line near that ownership, I'm just going to go play Dallas too.
Yeah, that's exactly not even a debate. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like if I'm going to play an over-owned line like that, I'm just going to go play the Stars.
Yeah, it's not even a debate. Like Minnesota without Kaprizov doesn't interest me enough to the point where I would consider playing a line at 17%. I don't mind Eriksson Ek, Hartman, and Johansson as a filler at 10-9. The problem is they're coming in at 8.5% projected, and that's just disgusting. But if you are doing some expensive stuff, you can throw them in that basket of fun stuff with your filler lines. They haven't been great, but at that price, whatever. Like, I have no interest in Minnesota 1 here without Kaprizov. And you throw 17% into the equation, like I'm out on them. You want to play them like they're fully correlated, 16,000, you're going to play heavy minutes, sure. Like, go ahead and do it. But it's not something I'm particularly interested in. I know the Blues only have a 2.6 total, but Kyrou Holloway Shen at 13,900, 2.2% top 2 stack, 2.5% projected ownership. They're going to avoid that Eriksson Ek matchup for the most part. They're going to see that Minnesota top line, which has been brutal without Kaprizov. They're fully correlated on a power play unit. Not that the Blues power play is anything special. Kyrou's their best winger. Like, I have interest in St. Louis too. I would consider them as a filler in single entry if I was playing like Vegas or something like that. You might have to punt at 13-9, but like at that price for the minutes they play and their matchup, I think St. Louis, the Kyrou line is my favorite line in this game.
Yeah, the Minnesota top line, like we talked about the Rangers, right? And it's like if you have a Rangers line at 17, whatever, perfectly correlated, all going to play 20 plus minutes, like you have to consider them. It's kind of the same thing with Minnesota, where this is a $16,000 line that's perfectly correlated at home, in a 2.8 total, that are all three guys are almost certainly going to play over 20 minutes. So you do have to consider them because they're 17.3 because of that 10% top two stack. I'm going to be honest. I'd rather just go pay the extra $1,300 or whatever it is and go play the Rangers instead. Because we have a long sample of that line actually playing well. This line is scoring. They're also shooting 15% while they do it. And if they're not a 15% shooting line, which true talent line, which they're not, but there's no line in the NHL that's a 15% shooting line. If they're more like 10%, this is a league average line. You know what I mean? And even 10% would be well above the league shooting percentage average. So they're just not generating a lot. They had a great week. I think Rossi had like 8 points in 3 games or something like that. Like we like him as a player. I just think that they just ran hot for a few games. I'm not just playing a line because they're running hot. Like I said, I'd rather just go play the Rangers and pay up the extra 13 or 1,500 or whatever it is. So I don't have an issue in particular playing Minnesota. St. Louis has been a lot better since they got their new coach. It's something that I wrote about in my newsletter. Hate to kind of cross promote here, but whatever. I wrote about it. Yeah. Since they hired their new coach, 5th fewest expected goals against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like this was, I think they hired him November 24th. So we're looking at about 6 weeks now. 5th fewest expected goals against at 5-on-5, lowest goals against at 5-on-5 in the NHL. It's like 16 or 17 games or something like that. It's not a tiny sample. St. Louis has been a completely different team under Jim Montgomery. So like Minnesota's fine because they're not expensive and they're perfectly correlated and they're going to play a lot of minutes. That's why they're fine. They're not fine because they're necessarily a good line or that they're in a good spot. That's just kind of what I'm getting at. I would rather play the Shen line on the St. Louis side. I agree with you there. Jake Middleton's back for Minnesota. We'll see what that does to the defensive combinations. Either way, I imagine the Shen, Holloway, Kyrou line isn't going to see a whole lot of Jonas Brodin. And with Jared Spurgeon out, that's when you get into like John Merrill, Zach Bogosian territory. So I do think they can kind of be had. Kyrou, Holloway, and Shen, 3.1 expected goals, 3.6 actual goals per 60 minutes in 135 minutes together. Not only are they scoring well, they're also generating extremely well. They play 17 to 18 minutes. They're all in the same power play. They're filler price status. They're not coming in with very much ownership, 2.5% ownership against 2.2% top two stack. I like that Kyrou line here. In general, I don't think I'm playing anything out of this game. It's a 5.5 total on a 10-game slate. I just think there are other spots I would rather go, but I kind of think I prefer that Shen line. But yes, obviously Minnesota one's in play. A perfectly correlated line at $16,000 is always in play.
Yeah. And if Cliffy won't promote it, I will. He writes a Substack. You can check his Twitter if you want to subscribe to it, at Slim Cliffy. He'll send it out, newsletter. Clayton loves it. If Clayton is the barometer for if we're doing good stuff or not, he will be honest with us if we suck.
Yeah.
And he has not said that. Nashville Predators with a 2.7 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 3.3 total. Winnipeg going Connor Scheifele-Velarde, Ehlers, Perfidi, Nemestikov, Niederreiter, Lowry, Iafallo. Nashville going Forsberg, Marchessault, Stamkos, O'Reilly, Nyquist, Vinny Hinostroza. That's a name. We were talking a little bit about this morning. The Niederreiter line has not been taking as much shutdown matchups at home of late. I don't know if it's because Appleton's out or it's just they're trying to mix it up. So that Scheifele line will probably see a bunch of lines here tonight. Now, I do like them regardless. I prefer Toronto here. because they're, again, like they have 1.8% projected ownership. Toronto has 1.7. It's negligible. But Toronto, that top line's in a better 5-on-5 spot. They're in a better power play matchup. They're not facing UC Saros. You know what I mean? So if I'm gonna spend 22,100 for a top line, I'll take the matchup with the AHL goalie and a clown team. Like Nashville's a bad team, don't get me wrong, but UC Saros has had an incredible season. I'm fine with Winnipeg one. I'm just saying, like in my one lineup, I'm gonna prioritize Toronto over them. In MME, I think getting over the field makes some sense here. They're a fully correlated line. At that price, getting no ownership, lots of positive leverage. I think an Ehlers one-off is also fine. He's kind of the Dylan Genther of that power play, I think is the way you can put it. So I think an Ehlers one-off, even if he only plays 15 minutes, is fine here. On the Nashville side, I haven't played this Forsberg, Marchessault, Stamkos line once, and I know they're only coming in at 3.2% projected ownership. I'm just not doing it going into Winnipeg. So, like, at that price, it's hard to prioritize them anyway with Columbus and Vegas sitting right there anyway. But, you know, in MME, you get to a little bit, that's fine. That O'Reilly, Nyquist, Hinostroza line those lines might be mixed up, right?
Well, Tommy Novak is back tonight.
So, yeah.
Maybe he goes to the third line and somebody from the fourth line gets the boot, but I'm not sure it'll change a lot on the second line because is still suspended. So it could be, you know, O'Reilly, Nyquist, Hinostroza, because I know Brunette loves to mix up those lines, but he does generally play Novak with Evangelista and O'Reilly with Nyquist. Those are two mans you can throw in that super cheap basket as a filler. But for me, this is a Winnipeg one game. Yeah, I just don't have interest in the Nashville side. Like, Winnipeg doesn't give up a ton of power plays. Nashville's not really drawing many power plays either. Like, their power play is good, but they're just not drawing a lot of power plays. And then power plays actually kind of gone cold a little bit over the last few weeks. So no interest for me on the Nashville side. To me, this is a Winnipeg one game. I'm still debating whether I would play them or Toronto. Like, by my personal numbers, I have Winnipeg slightly ahead than Toronto, and I think it's just the correlation thing. You do get all three guys on the top power play unit. Toronto, you only get two. Top two stacks, Winnipeg is slightly ahead of Toronto as well. Like, don't get me wrong, Saros definitely has been good, and that's kind of the one thing that's holding me back here. We have seen him have some pretty bad games recently. Like, what was it, 5 against Pittsburgh, 5 against St. Louis or something like that? So, like, he can be gotten to. I mean, I think I agree with you. I'd rather go play Toronto. It kind of goes against my numbers, and I hate when I do that. But I think Winnipeg's in a fine spot. I also think it's important to note that their team total started at 3 and got steamed to 3.3. I think it's the biggest jump of any team on this slate. It's just ahead of Dallas. So there's a lot of people that are banking on Winnipeg kind of filling the net here tonight. That always worries me. They've even been good lately. Like, I was looking to see if they slowed down in the last 10 games or so, and they really haven't. Like, they're still generating well by expected goals, by shots. Still get lots of ice time. They play with the empty net, like all that stuff. So I do still have interest in Winnipeg one. I just think I would rather go play Toronto, but they're basically neck and neck for me. And it's basically all I have interest in this game.
Yeah. Calgary Flames, they 3.2 total. Heading into Anaheim, the Ducks have a 2.8. Troy Terry, game time decision. His wife went into labor. Congrats to the Terrys. That's bad planning on their part. Not sure they planned that, though. But congrats on the extracurriculars there, Troy. But If he's out, that kind of takes me out on the Ducks. Did we get a goalie confirm on the Flames while we were on the air? I don't know.
I think it looks like it's going to be Wolf, so that kind of sucks.
Yeah. So like, if Terry's in, I would have interest in that Strome line. They've been very, very good this season. I guess you could throw like McTavish, Fabry, Gauthier in the basket of $10,000 lines you could play with really expensive stacks. But like, if Terry's out, I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do with the lines, and that makes me nervous. And like, I'm not going to wait up till 10 p.m. to see Ducks lines, which we barely get anyway. You know what I mean? So if Terry's out, I'm pretty much out on the Ducks. This is a Flames game, and there is a lot of ownership on these top two lines. Backlund, Coronado, Coleman, 12,600, 4.9% top two stack. 14.6% projected ownership. Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil, 13,700, 5.8% top two stack, 14% ownership. Sharon Govich, Zari, Peltier, 10,000, 2.5% projected ownership. So, like, I don't mind that Calgary third line. I'll just get that out of the way now, 10,000. You get Sharon Govich and Zari on the top power play unit. This is a very good power play matchup. If you want to avoid the super chalk Calgary here, that would be the line I'd use. But I prefer the other ones. And if you're going to give me similar ownership between the Kadri and Backlund line, I'll take the Kadri line all day long. They have better expected numbers. They have better actual numbers. So for me, it would be Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil. The ownership is whatever. I don't like playing the chalk Flames, but like, at some point, you got to consider it. This is the night I would consider it. Kadri's been insane lately. So it would be Kadri line 1 for me, Sharon Govich line 2, Backlund line 3. I have no issue with the Backlund line, but at almost 15%, I'd rather just play the Kadri line.
So yeah, with Anaheim, like, we won't know about Troy Terry until warmups. The issue with that, of course, is that there's only 2 late games, this one and then Vegas San Jose we're going to get to in a second. What I will say is that if you build with Anaheim 1 with the Troy Terry line and he's not in, the Vegas second line that we're going to talk about in a second is $1,000 cheaper. You can just straight swap to them. You leave $1,000 on the table, but there is a swap available that you can make. And that Anaheim top line has been very, very good. I was looking to see maybe if they had been slowing down like the Winnipeg top line, and they haven't. Their last 15 games together, 2.9 expected goals, 3.4 actual goals. They all skate 18 to 19 minutes. Both Frankfurt, Toronto, and Troy Terry have 14 shots apiece in their last 5 games. Like, they've been very good. Calgary's penalty kill, not very good, but Anaheim's power play is kind of in that Philadelphia and Boston bucket. Like, these guys suck. So even though it's a, quote, good power play spot, they're not a good power play to do it with. Honestly, the line I would have interest in, if Terry's out, would be McTavish, Gauthier, and Fabry. I assume that they would get more minutes if Troy Terry doesn't play. And 2.8 expected goals, 3.1 actual goals. They're not very good defensively. In fact, they're pretty bad defensively. But they've been able to create well offensively. They've been skating, on the low end 15 minutes, sometimes up to 18 minutes. 10,100. They're priced very reasonably at a point where you can put them in with your Torontos and your Winnipegs and your Pittsburghs and stuff like that. So it's probably the McTavish, Gauthier, Fabry line, but I don't really have a lot. If Vladash was starting, I would probably be playing some sort of duck stack, but it's not. It's Wolf, and Wolf has generally been pretty good this year. So it is the Calgary side. It is the Kadri line. You're right. Their expected goals are higher. Their actual goals are higher. Kadri has 25 shots in his last 5 games. I think only 1 goal, but 25 shots. Like, I was telling you before the show, stochastic projections, his projection for tonight is higher than Austin Matthews. That's the matchup that we're working with in the shot volume and the minutes that Kadri is producing. it is the Kadri line I would play. If you want to get a bit different, I think you can do something like leave off Pospisil and put on Coronado. Like Coronado is on the power play with Huberdeau. That stack, he is $1,000 more expensive than Coronado, but it still only makes that stack 14,700. That's perfectly fine. So I wouldn't mind doing something like that. It's the Calgary side I have interest in. There is a lot of ownership, but it is a really good matchup. I will say the McTavish line is kind of in play for me, but less enthused about it now the Wolf is starting.
Agreed. Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.9 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.6. Vegas going Eichel, Stone, Pearson, Hurdle, Carlson, Dorofeyev, Olofsson, Howden, Kolasar. Sharks going Granlund, Zetterlund, Eklund, Celebrini, Will Smith, Colin Graff, Toffoli, Wenberg, Costin. I'm out on the Sharks. Those lines are just brutal. I guess if you had to play a Sharks line, it'd be Granlund, Zetterlund, Eklund, but at that price, I'm just going to go play Calgary. Like, who cares? The Vegas doesn't take a ton of penalties anyway. They've been good 5-on-5, so it's just a brutal matchup. Out on the Sharks, Vegas won. Eichel, Stone, Pearson, 19,100, 13.6%. Top two stack, 12.2% projected ownership. They had positive leverage here. Now, do you want to play Tanner Pearson? He is only 3K. He was 2,500 the other night, but at 3K, even if he plays 13 minutes, he gets you 9.3 DK points. You're fine. If you do want to turn it into a power play stack, Olofsson's $2,000 more. Hurdle is $2,200 more.
I think Olofsson's off the power. Well, Olofsson was off the power play last game. I don't think Olofsson played.
He was out last game.
Yeah, it was Dorofeyev instead. Makes me wonder what they're going to do with the power play tonight if they're just going to put Olofsson back. That kind of worries me.
Yeah, and I went to go look while you were talking about the Flames. They only ran even strength lines. I didn't say anything on the power play. So just for sake of argument, you put Tomas Hurdle there. He's $2,200 more than Pearson. That's $21,300. It's $100 more than Pittsburgh won. So it's not price prohibitive. It's less than Toronto. It's less than Winnipeg. I think you could just straight up power play stack Vegas here tonight. I think that's fine. Honestly, I think just leaving Pearson there is fine at his price. There are plenty of options that you can choose from Vegas, depending on your build. If you want a little bit more expensive, you leave off Pearson, add in another power play guy. You need it a little bit cheaper, you leave Pearson there. You can't fit Vegas 1. I think Vegas 2 is certainly in play here. You only get Hurdle on the top power play unit, but that line has been very, very good. There's nothing that worries me on the Sharks side. So if you can't fit Vegas 1 and you want some exposure to the Vegas high total, I'm perfectly fine with Vegas 2. I'm also fine with a full-on power play stack. Your point about Olofsson going straight back to the power play is a good one. Like it could be a problem if they do put Dorofeyev on the power play. So maybe I just do like Eichel, Stone, Hurdle, and then consider adding in Theodore. But I'm good with Vegas 1, good with Vegas 2, good with the Vegas power play stack.
Yeah, on the San Jose side, like one of the reasons why I would have a little bit of interest in Granlund, Zetterlund, Eklund is just ice time. Like those guys, like Granlund will probably play like 22 minutes. Zetterlund and Eklund like 18-ish, if not up to 20. Now, Granlund is the only guy on the top power play unit from that line. They're still going with the 5-forward thing, even though they're not scoring. It is what it is. They're just waiting for Jake Wallman to get back. He might be back on Thursday night. It probably would be the Granlund line just for ice time, but I don't – Celebrini's already at the point for me where I don't like stacking the Sharks without Celebrini. So I guess my only real interest actually is Celebrini, Smith, Graff. I would probably just two-man stack Celebrini and Smith. They're both on the top power play unit together. Graff is kind of just a guy, but I think there are other filler stacks across the board I'd rather play. So yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in San Jose here. The interest is on the Vegas side. It is a good power play spot for Vegas. That's why I wish we knew if Olofsson was going back to the top power play unit. Now, Vegas didn't score in the last game with Dorofeyev there, so maybe they're just going to think, well, we'll put Olsen back. Maybe we can score. But San Jose's penalty kill has generally not been good this year, and they're at 3.1 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks. They've taken the third most penalties in the league this season, fourth most over the last 5 weeks. So Vegas actually does have a good power play when everybody is healthy, and they are. We just don't know if it's going to be Olsen and Dorofeyev. I assume it's going to be Olofsson again. We just don't know for sure. I honestly would be kind of tempted with some sort of Vegas power play stack here. It is pretty expensive. That's, obviously the big issue here. If you play them all together, it is 32,500.
Not much more expensive than Tampa 1.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good point. But if you power play stack them and then play a cheap goalie, like you need some under $3,500 players ready to go, but you can do it. And this is a great matchup at 5-on-5. It's a great matchup on the power play. They have a good power play. Vegas can struggle at drawing power play opportunities, but the Sharks do take a lot of penalties. So I kind of think, I'm fine with Vegas 1. I'm fine with Vegas 2. If you want to even strength stack them, no issue with either. I kind of like the power play here, so I think I would try to get as many power play guys in my lineup as I can. So it's a power play stack for me from Vegas, though either of the top 2 lines are perfectly fine.
For sure. Let's talk about defensemen here. Top of the board, we have Werenski, Yossi, Hedman, Bouchard, Shea Theodore, Josh Morrissey. There's not much you can say about Zach Werenski anymore. Here's his last 5 games. 5, not 10. 5. 1 goal, 9 assists, 36 shots on goal, 11 block shots. That's ridiculous. If you're playing Columbus 1, I think you really strongly have to consider bringing him along for the ride. I think he's a good one-off. As it is, he's an even better play with Columbus 1. I'm fully on board with the Werenski train. Yossi's fine. Hedman's fine. Bouchard's fine. I think the other 2 that I would rate second and third behind Werenski would be Theodore and Morrissey. I guess you could throw Weegar into that mix as well, but I think I go Werenski 1, Theodore 2, Morrissey 3.
Yeah, I was just looking at his game log. I think he has something like 7 games with at least 25 DK points, or 9 games with at least 25 DK points, and only like 13 or 14 with under 10. So he's been, Werenski's number 1 on the board. He's number 1 on my board. If you look at the expensive defenseman projections over at Stochastic here tonight, he's number 1 on that board, and it's honestly not even close. And the thing is, not only is he number 1 by raw point projection, he has a better point per dollar projection than every one of them except for Josh Morrissey, better than Yossi, better than Bouchard, better than Hedman. So it's Werenski for me. Morrissey would probably be number 2 on a point per dollar basis. I think he's okay in that matchup. Don't really like Yossi on the road against Hellebuck. I think for me, if I was playing 20 lineups, maybe I'd have 1 or 2 Yossi in a single entry. I think I'd probably just rather just go pay the extra $1,200 and go play Werenski, or take the $1,200 savings and play Morrissey instead. There are some guys in the mid price range I don't mind. Brock Faber's been playing a lot of minutes. Now Jake Middleton is going to be back, so maybe that'll cut into his minutes, but he's still getting top power play time. Thomas Chabot is not in a bad matchup. He still gets good minutes. I'm honestly wondering when Chabot's going to take over the top power play from Ottawa. It's been a little while since they've been struggling, and they have a clear second option right there. Noah Hannafin, obviously in a great matchup. There's a bunch of guys in that 5K-ish range. Moritz Cedar, Erik Karlsson, Mackenzie Weegar. Erik Karlsson, not so much. He'd be number 3. Miro Heiskanen, obviously, for Dallas. I think he's okay. For cheap guys, like Jake McCabe is out for Toronto, so there are guys like Chris Tanev, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Philippe Miners that I think are all playable here tonight. Thomas Harley, Cam Fowler, under 4K, perfectly fine. Dante Fabro, mentioned him earlier. If you want to play him with your Columbus stack instead of paying up for Werenski, I think that's okay. Simon Evanson's always in play for me, though. Now that he's not on the top pair, I do worry he's only going to play 20 to 21 minutes instead of 23 to 24. Artem Zub, he only played like 13 minutes in his first game back. I think it was 19 minutes in the last game out. And now both Travis Hamonic and Jacob Bernard Docker are injured. I got to think Zub's minutes go up here, and he's pretty cheap. Kevin Ball's under 3K in a good matchup with Calgary. Jalen Chatfield. Ben Sherratt, like we say it all the time, he's a good DFS player. He's not a good real player, but he gets minutes and he's on the top pair with Detroit. And I'll mention Scott Perunovich. I think Justin Falk is back tonight, though, for St. Louis, right? So I don't imagine that Perunovich is going to get that power play time. Going to have to double check that. If Falk is back, then Perunovich is a non-play for me. He'd only be an option if Falk's still out.
Yep. Let's talk about goalies. Our favorite thing to talk about. I didn't see news on Falk, but yeah, I mean, Perunovich has been priced still.
He also doesn't really do a whole lot.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I love the guy, but he plays 14 minutes and doesn't shoot the puck.
The Haas says Perunovich is out. Is Haas trustworthy? He is our resident Blues fan, so
yeah, it does look like Falk is back.
Let's talk about goalies. In the top range, if I was spending up tonight, I think I would be deciding between Wolf and Gustafson. Hellebuck is fine, but like it's just 8,400. You're getting to a range where you need a shutout. Like he's fine, but I prefer Gustafson and Wolf. I think Joe Woll is fine at 7,900. Like the mid-range guys that I like are Woll, Leon, or Lyon, however you pronounce it, and Jake Ottinger. Getting down to the cheap guys, there are three as well. Like, I would have preferred it if Dostal was starting for the Ducks, but it is Gibson. But Calgary does create a lot of shots, just sometimes not the best quality. So I think you could take a stab on Gibson. Bennington at 7,100 interests me. That's a low total game. He's 7,100. And UC Saros at 7K. It's just the price thing there.
Yeah, the two expensive goalies I'm really looking at are Gustafson and Hellebuck. I mean, 8,400, like, I do get it. It is expensive. Like, any goalie can get blown up at any time. But if I'm going to pay 8,400 for a goalie, it's Connor Hellebuck at home against one of the worst scoring teams in the league. That's
a good point.
You know what I mean? And it's him or Gustafson for the expensive goalies. For the cheaper goalies, like for me, Vasilevsky, it seems pretty obvious. 7,400 against Carolina. Carolina's been struggling a bit lately. That's at a price range, especially with the shot volume Carolina can put up. It's a price range where even if he lets in a couple, maybe even three, like he might still be fine. So Vasilevsky for sure. I think Gibson's okay. Like we talked about it on yesterday's show, maybe Saturdays. Like the only reason, the only reason why we're not talking about Gibson's season is because Dostal's just been better. But it's not to say Gibson's been bad. He's been pretty good. So I don't mind Gibson either. And then Jordan Binnington. Like I'm expecting a low-scoring St. Louis, Minnesota game. Doesn't guarantee it's going to be one. But I think Jordan Binnington is a cheap goalie's fine as well.
Yep. We will be back every day this week. Tomorrow is what? I think like a 4 or 5 gamer, or am I just an idiot?
I think it's 5 games.
Yeah. Tomorrow's 4, Thursday's 10, Friday's 5, Saturday there's a whole gaggle of games. But we will be back tomorrow for a 4-gamer. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
Just because I slandered the line, I'm going to hedge my bets here, and I'm going Brian Rust.
I love it. Hedging the bets. Our pal, the Wookiee, would say it's not hedging, it's straddling. But yeah, I think it's hedging. I don't want to go to Vegas because that just seems too easy. But I'm going to go Jason Robertson against my Rangers.
That would be something.
It wouldn't be in the least bit surprising, but it would be something.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, definitely not a straddle. That is a hedge. But yeah, we will be back tomorrow. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you in the Discord. 420 of you in chat. You guys are crazy. We love you. Good luck.
Good luck to everyone.